everybody to the Single and Stilettos Show. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I'm a matchmaker and dating coach at Dream Bachelor and Bachelorette. I'm also the founder of Single and Stilettos. Today we have as our guest Melissa Braverman, and she's a blogger at Single Gal in the City. And I'm so excited to have her here because she's going to talk about dating and what it's like in your 30s and the challenges women face. So welcome, Melissa, to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
I know. I'm so excited to have you here because it's a topic that I haven't covered yet. And I know a lot of women in their 30s go through different challenges than women in their 20s. But before we get into the questions, I would love for you to tell our audience how you got started about blogging about your dating life.
Absolutely. Well, it actually started with me keeping a journal, which I've done for the last 25 plus years. And a friend of mine 5 years ago, after hearing my dating trials and tribulations, said, you really should put this in a blog. And so I decided to take her advice. And 5 years and many, many blog entries later, here I am. And it's just been a wonderful ride, and I'm still really enjoying it.
Is it hard, though, to blog about your dating life and put it out there in the open?
It is. I think when you blog about your dating life, the longer you do it, the more you realize that there's kind of a delicate balance between sharing and putting too much out there. So the really deeply personal stuff does get reserved for handwritten volume 99. But to the extent
well, that's smart. You don't want to put everything out there.
Exactly. And I also try and keep it very anonymous in terms of when I'm writing about people that I'm dating. I don't use their full names. I try not to describe them in a way where if they happen to stumble upon it or a friend of theirs happened to stumble upon it, they would know that it was in fact them I was writing about.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because you don't want that to kill your dating life, right?
Exactly.
All right, well, let's get into it. So what are some of the biggest challenges that women in their 30s face, and how do you navigate all those challenges?
I think it starts off with the fact that when you're in your 30s, you're not meeting people as organically as you do in your 20s, when you're in college and you're first starting out in your career, where it just seems to happen almost by osmosis. I think when you're in your 30s, you really have to make the effort to put yourself out there more. I also think that once you get to that age, you become a little more discriminating in terms of who you're going to date. So that, by extension, narrows the dating pool at a time when it's already going to be narrowed because there are people that are settling down.
Right.
And I think a couple of ways to navigate those challenges is to really try to not get into a rut and to get out of your comfort zone. If you've been trying online dating for a while, try and get offline and try speed dating or going out more in groups, trying new activities. I also think it's really important to not get caught up in, is this Mr. Right? You know, there is just as much value in Mr. Right for now. And I think a lot of the time on the way to the destination, we forget to be in the moment.
Do you think, and I love all the points you brought up because I think they're all really, really great points about, you know, you don't meet people as organically as you did in your 20s. And you're right. I think you have to put out more of an effort. Do you think as women get older that they get more into a routine and that they can't get out of and it's hard for them?
I absolutely think that's true. I've seen it with friends of mine. I've seen it with women that I've connected with through the blog. I had one woman email me recently who said to me, can you please call me? I just need to figure out what to do. I'm a single mom. I'm not meeting anyone. And I think really, as I was saying before, you get into your established routines, your established social circle. So it's comforting and it's easy to keep doing the same thing because that's what's familiar and that's what you know.
Right.
But even if it's just kind of slowly dipping your toe into the waters of online dating or some activity you haven't tried before, I think it's really important, not just from the dating perspective, but also it keeps you energized and it makes you your best self, which is only something that's going to help you in the dating process.
Right. I think that's a really great point. And another question I have for you is, do you think that women, as they get older into their 30s, and I don't even, quite frankly, I don't think 30s is old at all, but do you think women, as they progress, that they tend to get more picky?
Absolutely. I've heard many times, and I've certainly been guilty of the I'll never settle syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I think another disservice that we sometimes do to ourselves in our 30s is we have this increasingly long list, a laundry list, if you will, of what Mr. Right has to have. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, I think sometimes you miss the opportunity to connect with people that might not seem like the right person on paper, but could actually be someone that has a lot of potential. So I definitely think it's kind of striking that balance between learning from your past experiences, but not bringing a cartload of baggage into your new ones.
He must have bring a checklist onto the date. Oh, you didn't pass my test. Sorry.
Must be this height, must be this level of education, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So do you feel like women in their 30s have more pressure to settle down by a certain age, or is it just any women of any age?
I definitely think that pressure intensifies once you get into your 30s. It's almost impossible, I would say, to turn on one of the national morning shows and not see a segment about how if you don't freeze your eggs by the time you're in your 30s, you're going to be in big trouble. And you look at how a lot of the single female celebrities are covered in the media. A great example, I would say, is Jennifer Aniston, that until she got engaged again in her 40s, it was poor, hopeless Jennifer Aniston, like she had no life, even though she's in great shape. She's a great career, great circle of friends. Even Duchess Kate, before she married Prince William, was known as Waity Katie in the media. They were college kids in their 20s. It's not like she was even in her 30s before that was foisted upon her. And I'm hard-pressed to think of a male celebrity that's in his 30s or 40s that the media is saying, poor George Clooney. You don't ever see any media stories about sad sack George Clooney. So I definitely think there's a double standard, and I think sometimes that can feed into the anxiety of being single in your 30s.
I love that you brought that up, because I think Jennifer Aniston is a really great person to bring up, because here she has all these great things in her life, but you're right, the media portrayed her as, oh, poor Jennifer. And why is it that women are not complete just because they don't have a man? I mean, she has an amazing life.
Exactly.
Do you think she was sitting around going, oh, poor me? I don't think so.
Especially since she did seem to have a pretty active dating life, if you believe everything you read in the tabloids, which obviously you can't all the time. But I just think it's really fascinating, because you don't see any of those stories, as I said, about any male celebrities, but there's so many of them about female celebrities, and more we're seeing women like Jennifer Aniston, like Sandra Bullock, like Halle Berry, who's now having her second child in her upper 40s, and I think they're wonderful examples, and at the same time they're kind of billed as these anomalies, that this can almost never happen. There was that crazy statistic a while ago that you're more likely to get affected by an act of terrorism than to meet a man if you're over the age of 35 and single, and I think that alarmist media mentality is really harmful to us, and I think it's important to not feed into that, as hard as it is to not.
So what about women in their 30s? Because regular women, I'm not talking about celebrities, but what about regular women in their 30s who hear from their friends and family members, oh, you're not married yet, you don't have a boyfriend, and the holidays are the worst time, because then women go to the holidays and they hear this from their relatives, oh, you poor thing, and while they're not really sad, obviously they would prefer to have a man, but they're not really sad. How does a woman overcome those challenges?
Well, I can certainly say I have been on the receiving of those particular comments on more occasions than I care to count. And I kind of liken to the equivalent of saying to a married friend, how's your sex life? Because that's how intrusive and yet it's completely acceptable for, you to ask a single person, what basically amounts to prying questions. And if the information is volunteered, it's one thing. But when it's not, I do increasingly find that it is really intrusive.
Have you found like a good comeback to say like, well, I'm really happy with my life. I have all these great things, and a man's not going to complete me?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much that's exactly what I say, and I tend to deflect the conversation and really focus on my career, my travels, the other things that fill my life, because always what you're getting when those comments are coming at you is this sort of sympathetic, downtrodden sentiment, and then you kind of end up falling into the trap of, wait, should I be feeling like my life isn't complete? And I think the most important thing is to just reinforce to whoever's making that comment that you're very happy, and when there's any breaking news to report about your dating life, you'll be the first to share it. It doesn't need to be solicited. Exactly.
I think that's a really great point. And you brought up another point about women in their 30s feeling pressure to freeze their eggs. And what are your thoughts or advice on that? Do you think women should do that? Is that smart, or do you think it's a bad idea?
Oh, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's really an individual choice. I actually have a very good friend of mine who recently did it, and I've gone for the consultation. I didn't actually go as far as doing it myself.
Hmm.
I think, obviously there is the biological clock, and as much as we try to ignore it, it's there. The biological clock was not designed to meet a partner later in life. So I think it's something that really, as a woman, you have to decide for yourself how important is it to you to be a biological mom, and then make that choice accordingly, and not because you're feeling pressured by family or friends or
Hmm.
because of all the alarmist media messages, but really because it's something you want to do for yourself.
I think that's a really great point because it is an individual choice and you shouldn't feel the pressure to do it. But I will say, I personally also know some people that have had that done. And I will say, ladies, whether you're going to do it or not, or you're thinking about it, if you're in your mid to late 30s, that it does take the pressure off. And
Hmm.
because I notice a huge difference in the women that I know that have done it,
Hmm.
and they feel more relaxed when they go out on dates. They don't feel the pressure. And of course it's an investment, so obviously it depends on your financial situation, but if you can afford it, I highly suggest to do it because it'll just take the pressure off and you won't feel the need to, oh my God, is this next guy, is this going to be my husband? Am I going to have children with him? You're not going to think
Exactly.
like that anymore. You're going to relax more and try and find the right guy who can be a great father to your children, right?
I agree completely.
So, what do you think other pressures exist for women in settling down?
I think one of the biggest pressures is that, old cliche of can you have it all? And I think today women are expected to operate at a very high level and be able to flawlessly multitask their careers, their relationships, motherhood, if that's a part of their life too. And I think, as I was saying before, it's really important to try and distance yourself from all that chatter and really be centered with what's important to you. And at the end of the day, all we can do is the best that we can. And sometimes that means that, a part of your life isn't necessarily going to be operating full speed ahead the way another part is. But that doesn't mean that you should feel bad about yourself or like you're a failure somehow. That's just the ebb and flow of life.
Do you find it hard? Because I hear this a lot from my male clients is they don't like when a woman brings her work personality to a date. Do you find it hard to separate, your work personality from your dating personality?
I don't really. I mean, I think there's a certain confluence between the two. At the same time, I always kind of like to say I like to be respected as a woman from 9 to 5 and treated as a lady from 5 to 9.
Oh, I love that. That's a
And
great one.
my mom used to say that, God rest her soul, so that's where I get it from. But I really think it's important to be a woman when you're in a dating scenario. And I think because it's such a competitive landscape, I think a lot of times people think, oh, I have to basically prove myself and prove that I'm successful in every single area of my life, including my career. But that's not what dating is about. It's about seeing if you're compatible, about getting to know each other. So I don't know if it's necessarily about turning off your work personality as it is turning on your own personality and who you really are at your core.
That's a great point. I love that you said that. So, do you ever get really discouraged with dating and just are like,
Yes.
you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to
Yes.
take a break. And
Yes.
how do you stay motivated then?
Well, I think getting discouraged is inevitable when you're in your 30s and you're still dating, because sometimes it does feel like Groundhog Day and you're having that same first date conversation over and over again to the point where you do kind of feel like handing over your resume and just fast forwarding to the second date.
Right.
And I think there are a couple of different ways that I try and cope with it. One, if I feel like I'm getting burnt out, I take a break. I try not to tell myself, oh, if I don't go out on this date, I could be missing out on the one. Sometimes you just need a break. So I think it's really important to pay attention to how you're feeling when you're getting to that point in the process. I also think, going back to what I said before, you've got to mix it up a little bit. So I've been doing online dating. It hasn't been going well lately. So I've decided, well, let me get back out in the world. And it sounds really tiresome, but even just going out to neighborhood bars with friends, places I haven't necessarily been to in a while, you meet people. And it's funny because you hear so much, oh, you never pick up anyone in bars. But actually, I'm in a wedding in a few months for my cousin who did, in fact, meet her husband in a bar. So So I think sometimes it's about getting back to basics. And if what you're doing isn't working, try something else or just take a break and don't feel bad about it.
I love that you say that, because it's one of the things that I tell my clients is that if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same results. So try something different. So if something's not working, like you said, venture out and try something new. Get out of your routine, because you never know. And sometimes we get too comfortable in the things that we're doing that we don't really optimize what we're actually doing, right?
Absolutely.
So give us your last best dating tip for women in their 30s. Or I should say all women, because I think it...
I think, kind of going back to what I said before, it's really appreciating that it is a journey. It's not all about getting to that final destination, and try not to miss the moment. I think if I could tell my 20-something self anything, it would be just enjoy where you are, because so many times when you're test driving a relationship, you're fast forwarding to the future and trying to predict the outcome, and you miss where you are. So my number one tip would just be present. Whether it's in your dating life, your work life, make the most of where you are right now, because that's what's really going to get you to the next place. And have faith. I have so many friends that have married wonderful guys that are in great relationships. My parents were an amazing love story. They're unfortunately no longer with us, but they were both divorced and well into their lives when they found each other. So it's never too late to find your soulmate if that's what you want.
I love that you said that. I think that's one of the best dating tips I've heard. That's awesome. So, Melissa, how can people find you?
My blog is singlegalnyc.com, and I'm also on Twitter at singlegalnyc, and I'm always happy to connect with fellow singles, and as I said before, I think we're all in the trenches together, so we have to support each other in the adventure of being single.
I think that's great. I love that. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Single and Stilettos show. Our show is available both in video format and podcast format. If you would like to view the videos, you can go to singleandstilettos.com. If you'd like to get the podcast, you can go to iTunes and download it from there. And if you would like to get our free report on the top 10 secrets on what attracts a man and what turns him off, you can click right here on the video, or you can go to singleandstilettos.com.